The space station called Meridian 9 floated in the dark emptiness between two star systems. It was a neutral place, a place where no flag flew and no government had power. Here, anyone could come. Traders, travelers, refugees, and the broken soldiers of a war that had ended 7 years ago. The war between humans and the Empire had lasted for 12 terrible years. It had burned across 100 worlds. It had killed billions of people on both sides. Cities had become ash. Moons had cracked under the power of weapons that should never have existed. Families had been torn apart, and entire generations had known nothing but fire and death. But the war was over now. The peace treaty had been signed. The soldiers had gone home, or at least tried to. Some of them found that home no longer existed. Some of them found that they no longer fit in the peaceful worlds they had fought to protect. These lost soldiers drifted to places like Meridian 9, where the rules were simple and the questions were few. Park was one of these lost soldiers. He sat alone at a small table in the back corner of a bar called the Drifting Anchor. It was not a nice bar. The lights were dim and yellow. The tables were old and scratched. The air smelled like cheap alcohol and machine oil, but did not come here for comfort. He came here because this was where the other broken soldiers gathered. Here, no one asked about the scars. Here, no one expected him to smile and pretend that everything was fine. Was 43 years old, but he looked older. His black hair had turned gray at the sides. Deep lines marked his face, carved there by years of stress and pain. A long scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, a thick line of damaged tissue that pulled slightly at the corner of his eye. He had received this scar at the Battle of Epsilon Reach, when a soldier had tried to cut off his head with a plasma blade. The blade had missed its target by 2 inches, had not missed with his knife. He wore simple clothes now, a dark jacket over a gray shirt, pants that had seen better days. No uniform, no medals, no rank insignia. He had packed all of those things into a box years ago and shoved them into the back of a closet on a planet he no longer visited. In front of him sat a glass of brown liquid. It was not good alcohol, but it was strong, and that was all he needed. He drank slowly, making each glass last. He was not here to get drunk. He was here to pass the time until exhaustion finally let him sleep without dreams. The bar was half full tonight, recognized most of the faces. There was behind the counter a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and steady hands. She had been a combat medic during the war. She had saved more lives than anyone could count, and she had watched more people die than anyone should ever have to see. Now she poured drinks and kept order in her small establishment. At the bar sat a young woman who had lost her left leg below the knee during the Siege of 4. She had a prosthetic now, a simple mechanical replacement that she liked to prop up on the stool next to her. She was only 29 years old, but her eyes held the same tired weight that saw in his own reflection. There were others too, old men who had commanded ships, young people who had enlisted as teenagers and survived through pure luck. All of them carried invisible wounds that would never fully heal. Watch the door. He always watched the door. It was an old habit from the war. Know your exits. Know who enters. Know where the threats might come from. He could not stop himself from doing it, even after 7 years of peace. The door opened, and everything changed. The alien that walked in was tall, very tall, nearly 7 feet of gray skin and hard muscle. He had 4 eyes arranged in 2 pairs, one above the other, all of them a deep orange color that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. His face was angular, with a heavy brow and a jaw that jutted forward slightly. 2 small horns rose from the top of his skull, curving backward. The entire bar went silent. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Glasses paused halfway to lips. Every human in the room turned to look at the alien standing in the doorway. His hand moved automatically to his belt, but there was no weapon there. He had stopped carrying a gun 3 years ago. He forced his hand back onto the table and watched. The war civilian clothes, a long coat of dark material over a simple tunic, pants tucked into heavy boots, but nothing about him looked civilian. He stood like a soldier. He moved like a soldier. His four eyes swept the room with the careful precision of someone who had spent decades reading battlefields and calculating threats. His left arm was not real. It was mechanical, made of gray metal and black cables. The prosthetic was crude by human standards. Technology was advanced in many ways, but their medical science had always been less developed than their weapons. Knew this. Everyone in the bar knew this. His name was, and he had been a commander in the Imperial fleet. He had led the assault on New Seoul. He had ordered the bombardment that had killed 3 million people in a single night. He had commanded the prison camps on 3, where captured human soldiers had been worked to death in the mines. Had spent 3 years in those camps. He still woke up screaming sometimes, trapped in memories of the darkness and the cold and the endless labor. And now was walking toward his table. His hand moved slowly beneath the counter, knew what she kept there. An old service pistol, cleaned and loaded, always ready. She had never needed to use it, but she was clearly considering it now. Had gone still, her prosthetic leg tensing as if she was preparing to stand. Her hands gripped the edge of the bar. The other veterans watched in silence. Some of them looked angry, some of them looked scared. All of them looked ready for violence. Stopped at the edge of his table. His lower pair of eyes focused on the human while his upper pair continued to scan the room. Old habits, thought. We all have them. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence in the bar was so complete that could hear the hum of the station's life support systems. Then spoke. His voice was deep and rough, translated through a small device attached to his collar. The translation was not perfect. It made his words sound slightly mechanical, slightly flat. "This is the only empty seat in the bar," said. "May I sit?" Looked up at the alien who had destroyed his world. The alien who had killed his friends. The alien who had given him nightmares that would last for the rest of his life. Behind the bar, his fingers wrapped around the grip of her pistol. His body was tight as a wire, ready to move. Every veteran in the bar was watching, waiting, ready to act on whatever decided. Looked at the empty chair across from him. It was a small chair, too small for this large frame, but it was there, empty, waiting. He thought about everything he had lost: his home, his family, his friends, his faith in a universe that made sense. He thought about the camps, about the cold, about the faces of the people who had died beside him. He thought about 7 years of peace that had felt like war inside his own head. Then he made his choice. He gestured to the empty chair with one hand. "Sit," he said. The word fell into the silence like a stone into still water. Ripples of shock spread through the bar. His hand froze on her weapon, stared at with wide eyes. Looked at the chair, then back at. Something flickered in his orange eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or something deeper. Slowly, carefully, the old commander sat down. The chair creaked under his weight, but it held. And in the back corner of a rundown bar on a forgotten space station, 2 enemies shared a table for the first time. The chair was too small for. His knees pressed against the underside of the table, and he had to sit forward awkwardly to fit. But he did not complain. He simply adjusted his position and placed his hands flat on the scratched surface of the table. His mechanical left hand made a soft clicking sound as the metal fingers settled. The prosthetic was ugly, noticed. It was functional but rough, with visible joints and cables that moved stiffly. Human prosthetics were much better. They looked almost real, and they moved with natural smoothness. But his arm looked like what it was, a machine bolted onto flesh. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The bar remained silent around them. Could feel the weight of every stare, could sense the tension in the room like electricity before a storm. One wrong word, one wrong move, and this place would explode into violence. Still had her hand under the counter, caught her eye and gave a small shake of his head. "Not yet. Wait." She did not look happy, but she trusted him. Her hand stayed where it was, but she did not draw the weapon. Notice the exchange. His upper eyes flicked toward the bartender, reading the situation with the quick intelligence of a career soldier. He knew he was in danger. He knew that every human in this room wanted him dead. But he had sat down anyway. "I would like to order a drink," said. His voice carried across the silent bar. "If that is permitted." His jaw tightened. For a moment thought she would refuse. But then she spoke, her voice flat and cold. "Credits first, on the counter." Reached into his coat with his real hand, moving slowly so that everyone could see what he was doing. He pulled out a small chip and tossed it onto the bar. The chip made a clicking sound as it landed. Picked it up and checked the amount. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because she poured a drink into a thick glass and slid it down the counter. A young man sitting nearby caught it and passed it towards table, handling it like it might bite him. Took the glass with a nod of thanks. The liquid inside was green and thick, with a sharp smell that made his nose wrinkle. Physiology was different from human. They could drink things that would kill a human, and human alcohol did almost nothing to them. Took a sip and set the glass down. His 4 eyes returned to. "You know who I am," said. It was not a question. "Yes," replied. His voice was steady, but his heart was beating faster than he wanted to admit. "You know what I have done?" "Yes." Nodded slowly. "Then why did you let me sit?" It was a good question. Had been asking himself the same thing since the word sit had left his mouth. He did not have a complete answer. Maybe there was no complete answer. Maybe some choices came from a place deeper than logic. "I do not know yet," said honestly. "Maybe I will figure it out." Made a sound that might have been a laugh, though it was hard to tell with expressions. "That is more honest than I expected." "Honesty is easy," said. "Lying takes too much energy." "Yes," agreed, "it does." They drank in silence for a while. Around them, the bar slowly returned to life. Conversation started again, though they were quieter than before. People kept glancing at the corner table, watching the strange scene with nervous eyes. Still had not relaxed. She sat sideways on her stool, facing their table, ready to move if needed. Her prosthetic leg clicked softly as she shifted her weight. Noticed that was looking at her leg. The eyes moved from her prosthetic to his own mechanical arm. A connection, perhaps. 2 soldiers who had left pieces of themselves on distant battlefields. "This station has many veterans," said, "human and both." "Yes," replied. "The war made a lot of broken people. We gather in places like this." "I have noticed." His voice was strange. There was something in it that could not identify. "I have been to many bars on this station, 47 to be exact." "That is a lot of bars." "None of them would serve me." Touched his mechanical arm, fingers clicking against metal. "Some tried to kill me. One succeeded in taking my eye." He pointed to his upper left eye. Looked more closely and saw that it was not a natural eye. It was a prosthetic, made of glass and metal, designed to look like a real eye but not quite succeeding. There was something dead about the way it sat in the socket, something that did not move quite right. "A human veteran," continued. "He attacked me in a bar on the lower levels, used a broken bottle. I did not fight back." "Why not?" Was quiet for a moment. His 3 remaining natural eyes seemed to look inward, seeing something that was not in this room. "Because I understood why he did it," finally said. "He had lost his family in the bombing of New Seoul. I ordered that bombing. I killed the people he loved. If I had been in his position, I would have done the same thing." The words hung in the air between them. Felt something twist in his chest. He had expected many things from this conversation. Excuses, justifications, maybe even threats. He had not expected this. "You let him hurt you," said, "on purpose." "Yes." "That is either very wise or very stupid. I cannot tell which." Made that strange sound again, the one that might have been a laugh. Perhaps both. Wisdom and stupidity often look similar. Finished his drink and signaled to for another. She brought it herself this time, walking around the bar and setting it on the table with a hard thump. Her eyes burned into with pure hatred, but she did not speak. Then she returned to her position behind the counter. She lost her squad in the camps, said quietly. All 12 of them. She was the only survivor. His eyes lowered. The camps, yes. His mechanical hand clenched, metal fingers grinding against each other. I remember the camps. Do you? His voice was flat. I spent 3 years in them. The words fell like stones into the space between them. His whole body went still, his 4 eyes fixed on with an intensity that was almost physical. Which camp? Asked. His voice was barely above a whisper. 3, the mines. Closed his eyes, all 4 of them. For a moment he looked very old, very tired, very much like a man carrying a weight that was crushing him from the inside. I commanded 3 for 8 months, said. Before I was transferred to the fleet, I know what happened in those mines. I know what my soldiers did to the prisoners. Said nothing. There was nothing to say. The truth was sitting between them now, ugly and raw. I signed the orders, continued. Increased production quotas, reduced food supplies, extended work shifts. I told myself it was necessary. I told myself it was war. I told myself that your people would do the same to us if they had the chance. Would we? Asked. Opened his eyes and Met's gaze. I do not know, maybe. War makes monsters of everyone. That is not an excuse. It is just the truth. No, agreed. It is not an excuse. They sat in silence again. The bar noise continued around them, but at their table there was only the weight of shared history and the space where words could not reach. Finally spoke again. His voice was different now, smaller, more honest. You are the first human who has let me sit at their table. In 7 years of peace, you are the first one who has not tried to kill me or throw me out. He paused. I need to understand why. Looked at the across from him. He saw the gray skin and the alien features. He saw the mechanical arm and the glass eye. He saw the uniform posture of a commander and the hunched shoulders of a man who had lost something important. And beneath all of that, he saw something he recognized, something he saw in the mirror every morning. He saw a soldier who did not know how to stop fighting the war. Because I am tired, said simply. I am tired of hatting. I am tired of carrying the weight of what happened. I am tired of letting the war control who I am and what I do. He finished his drink and set the glass down. You sitting at this table does not change what you did. It does not bring back the dead. It does not heal my scars or give me back the years I lost. But refusing to let you sit would not do those things either. It would just be another battle in a war that is supposed to be over. Stared at him. His orange eyes were unreadable, but something in his posture had shifted. He looked less like a commander now. He looked like a man who was hearing something he had needed to hear for a very long time. And maybe, continued, maybe I just wanted to look at you, to see what the enemy looks like when the shooting stops, to see if you are a monster or just another broken soldier like the rest of us. And what do you see? Asked. Looked at him for a long moment. I see someone who is tired of carrying the weight, he said, just like me. His mechanical fingers tapped against the table. It was a nervous habit, realized. The kind of small movement that people made when they were thinking hard or feeling uncomfortable. Strange to see such a human gesture from an alien. The bar had almost returned to normal now. Conversations flowed again, though they were softer than usual. People still glanced at the corner table, but the immediate tension had faded. For now, at least, there would be no violence. Had stepped out from behind the counter. She walked slowly through the bar, checking on customers, but her path kept her close to their table. She was watching, ready. Had ordered another drink, but she had not relaxed. Her body was still angled toward them, her prosthetic leg braced against the floor. understood their caution. He shared it in a way, but something had shifted in him since sat down, something he could not quite name. "Tell me about 3, said suddenly. His voice was quiet, meant only for ears. Tell me what it was like from the inside. It was a strange request, dangerous even. Felt the old memories stirring, rising up from the dark place where he kept them locked away. He had not talked about the camps in years, not to the counselors who had tried to help him, not to the few friends who had survived, not to anyone. But sitting here, across from the man who had helped create that hell, he felt something break loose inside him. It was cold, began. His voice was flat, distant. That is the first thing I remember, the cold. 3 has no sun worth mentioning, just a distant star that gives light but no warmth. The mines were deep, but the surface buildings where we slept were thin, cheap, made for people who were not supposed to survive. Listened in silence. His eyes did not leave his face. We worked 18-hour shifts in the beginning. Later, when the quotas increased, it became 20 hours, then 22. We dug for ore that powered your warships. We moved rocks with our bare hands when the machines broke. We died in cave-ins, in accidents from exhaustion and starvation, and diseases that your doctors did not bother to treat. His hand had closed around his empty glass. He did not remember doing it. I arrived with 63 other prisoners from my unit. After 6 months, there were 40 of us left. After a year, there were 20. By the time I escaped, there were 7. And of those 7, only 3 made it back to human space. How did you escape? Asked. There was a malfunction in the power grid. A storm on the surface disrupted the shields. Some of us saw our chance and ran. Most of us were caught and killed. But a few of us found an old transport ship that the guards had missed. We flew it until the fuel ran out, then drifted until a human patrol found us. Fell silent. The memories were pressing against him now, trying to pull him back into the darkness. He could almost feel the cold again, almost smell the rock dust and the death. I did not know, said. His voice was rough. I knew the numbers, I knew the quotas, I knew that prisoners died, but I did not know what it meant. I did not let myself know. It is easy not to know, replied. Knowing hurts. Yes, it does. Reached into his coat again, moving slowly. He pulled out a small object and set it on the table. It was a medal, a human medal. Recognized it immediately. It was a Valor Cross, the highest honor that the Terran Coalition could give to a soldier. It was given only for extraordinary heroism, for acts of courage that went beyond what any person should be expected to give. The medal was old and worn. The ribbon was faded and the medal was scratched, but it was still beautiful in its simple way. Where did you get this? Asked. His voice had gone tight. Epsilon Reach, replied. The final battle. There was a human officer who led a counterattack against my forces. He held a position for 3 hours with only 12 soldiers. He killed many of my warriors. He saved many of his own people. His eyes seemed to darken. I killed him myself, hand to hand at the end when his ammunition was gone and my soldiers were too afraid to approach him. He fought until his last breath. Even when he was dying, he tried to stab me with a broken knife. Looked at the medal. He thought about the soldier who had earned it. He thought about what it must have taken to fight like that, to stand against impossible odds and refuse to break. Why do you carry it? Asked. I told myself it was a trophy, said, proof of my victory, something to remind me of my greatest battle. He paused and his voice grew quieter. But that was a lie I told myself. It was never a trophy. Then what is it? A chain. His mechanical hand touched the metal fingers clicking against metal. Every night I look at it. Every night I remember his face, the way he fought, the way he died, and I ask myself the same question, was it worth it? Was it? His 4 eyes met. No, nothing about that war was worth it. We killed billions of people. We destroyed worlds. We created orphans and widows and broken soldiers who will never be whole again. And for what? for territory that we cannot use, for pride that has turned to shame, for an empire that lied to us about why we were fighting. His voice had grown louder. The bar had gone quiet again, listening, but seemed not to notice. I believed them, he continued. I believed everything they told me. Humans are a threat. Humans will expand until they destroy us. We must strike first or be destroyed. I believed it and I killed for it and I ordered others to kill for it. And now I know it was all lies. He picked up the medal and held it in his mechanical hand. This man died for his people. He died protecting them from me. And I killed him because I believed lies that powerful men told me so that they could become more powerful. His voice cracked slightly. How do I live with that? How do I carry that weight and keep walking? The question hung in the air. It was not really asking for an answer. It was the sound of a soul that had been crushed under the weight of its own actions. Understood that sound. He had made it himself many times in the dark hours of the night when sleep would not come. You do not carry it alone, said slowly. He was surprised by his own words, but they felt true. That is the first thing, you cannot carry it alone. No one can. I have no one, replied. My family has turned away from me. My soldiers are dead or scattered. I am a war criminal in the eyes of my own people and a monster in the eyes of yours. I have no one. You have this table, said. Right now, in this moment, you have this table. Looked at him. Something moved behind his orange eyes. Something that might have been hope, or might have been fear, or might have been the first crack in a wall that had held for too long. Why? Asked again. Why do you let me stay? Why do you listen to me? I do not deserve this. Thought about the question. He thought about the camps. He thought about the friends he had lost. He thought about the scar on his face and the scars that no one could see. Because I spent 3 years learning how to hate, he said. I learned it in the minds of 3. I learned it in the cold and the dark and the death. I learned it so well that it became part of me. It lived in my chest like a fire that never went out. He leaned forward slightly. And then I spent 4 years trying to unlearn it. 4 years of nightmares and counseling and pills that made me feel nothing. 4 years of pushing everyone away because the hate had become the only thing I knew how to feel. Listened without moving. I am still learning, continued. Every day I am still learning how to put the hate down, how to stop carrying the weight, how to be something other than a weapon that the war made me into. He gestured at the bar around them. Everyone in this room is fighting the same battle. The war ended 7 years ago, but it is still happening inside all of us. We are all still trying to find a way out. Looked at directly. You ask why I let you sit. Maybe it is because I am tired of fighting. Maybe it is because I want to prove that I am stronger than the hate. Maybe it is because I need to know that peace is possible, even between enemies. I do not have one answer. I have all of them. Was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, he set the Valor Cross on the table between them. I cannot give this back, he said. The man who earned it is dead. His family, if he had one, is beyond my reach. But I can stop carrying it as a trophy. I can carry it as something else. As what? As a reminder, said, that the people I killed were real, that they fought and loved and dreamed just like me, that they deserved better than to be enemies in a war that should never have happened. He pushed the medal toward the center of the table. And as a promise, that I will spend whatever time I have left trying to be something other than what the war made me. Looked at the medal. He thought about the soldier who had died wearing it. He thought about honor and courage and the terrible cost of war. Then he picked up the medal and slid it back across the table. Keep it, he said, but do not carry it as a chain. Carry it as proof that you remember. That is all the dead can ask of us, to remember them and to try to build something worth their sacrifice. Took the medal in his mechanical hand. His fingers closed around it gently, almost reverently. And for the first time since he had entered the bar, something in his posture relaxed. just slightly, just enough to notice. The wall was beginning to crack. The night moved forward. Hours passed in the dim light of the drifting anchor, and slowly, the tension in the bar began to change. It did not disappear. The hatred was still there, in the eyes of the veterans who watched from across the room. The pain was still there, in the memories that could never be erased, but something else was growing alongside it. Curiosity, perhaps, or the first small seeds of something that might one day become understanding. Had stopped keeping her hand near the pistol. She still watched the corner table, but her expression had shifted from anger to something more complicated, something that looked almost like confusion. Had turned back to face the bar. She was listening to the conversation between an old pilot and a young infantry soldier, but caught her glancing toward them every few minutes. Her face was unreadable. Other veterans had begun to drift closer, not joining the conversation but moving to nearby tables, ordering drinks they did not really want. They were listening. They wanted to hear what the enemy had to say. Noticed it too. His four eyes tracked the movement in the room, reading the shifting dynamics with the instincts of a lifelong soldier. "They are watching," he said quietly. "They are curious," replied. "Most of them have never spoken to us. They have only killed them or been hurt by them or lost people to them. You are the first one they can look at without a weapon in their hands. I do not know if that is better or worse." "Neither do I." Drained the last of his green drink and set the glass down. His mechanical hand clicked against the table again, that nervous tapping that seemed to be his way of processing difficult thoughts. "May I ask you something?" said. "You may ask, I may not answer." Fair paused, gathering his words. "In the camps, in 3, did you ever think about giving up? Did you ever think about just stopping?" It was a heavy question, felt the weight of it settle into his chest. "Every day," he admitted. "Every single day, when the cold was too much, when the work was too hard, when another friend died and I had to carry their body to the incinerators, I thought about giving up. I thought about letting the cold take me. I thought about walking into the guard's fire and ending it quickly." "But you did not." "No, I did not." "Why?" Was quiet for a moment. He thought about the question. He thought about the camps. He thought about the stubborn flame that had kept burning inside him even when everything else had frozen. He finally said. Tilted his head slightly, a question. "Was in my unit," explained. "A young soldier, only 20 years old when we were captured. He was scared. We all were, but he was terrified. He had never seen real combat before. He had joined the military to pay for his sister's education, not to fight in a war." The memories rose up and let them come. This time he did not push them away. In the camps started to break. The fear was eating him alive. He could not sleep. He could not eat. He kept making mistakes at work and the guards punished him for it. Every punishment made him weaker and every weakness brought more punishment. It was a cycle that would kill him. His voice softened. "So I started watching over him. I made sure he ate his rations even when he did not want to. I covered his mistakes when I could. I stayed with him at night when the nightmares came. I told him stories about home, about the things we would do when the war ended, about the food we would eat and the places we would visit. He was your friend." "He became my purpose," said. "Keeping him alive gave me a reason to stay alive myself. When I thought about giving up, I thought about what would happen to him if I was not there, and I could not let him face that alone." Was silent, listening. "Died in the 2nd year," continued. His voice was steady, but something cracked beneath the surface. "The sickness took him. There was no medicine. There was nothing I could do. I held him while he died and I told him about his sister, about how proud she would be of him, about how she would live a good life because of what he had sacrificed." He looked down at his hands. "And then I found another person to protect. A woman named, she was a pilot, shot down and captured. She was strong, but the mines were breaking her, so I did the same thing. I watched over her. I gave her a reason to keep going, and she gave me one too. What happened to her? She died in the third year, a cave-in. I was 50 meters away when it happened. I heard her screaming, but I could not reach her in time. The words hung in the air, heavy, terrible, true. And after her, asked. After her there was a sergeant, tough, mean, the kind of soldier who scared everyone, even the enemy, but in the camps even he was breaking. So I watched over him too. I told him stories. I kept him moving. I refused to let him stop. He survived. No, he died a week before we escaped. The guards killed him because he refused to bow. They beat him for an hour and he never made a sound. He never begged. He looked at them like they were nothing, and he died with his eyes open. Looked up at. I kept finding people to protect because protecting them protected me. It gave me something to live for when there was nothing else. And when they died, I carried their memory. I told myself that I would survive to tell their story, that their lives would mean something because I remembered them. He tapped his chest over his heart. They are all here. And the others, dozens of them. I carry them with me and I refuse to let them be forgotten. That is why I survived. That is why I am still here. His mechanical hand had stopped tapping. His eyes were fixed on with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. I do not have that, said. His voice was rough. I do not have people to protect. I do not have memories that keep me moving forward. I only have the faces of the people I killed. They do not comfort me. They haunt me. Then find new people, said. Find someone to protect. Find a purpose that is not about the past. How? Who would accept me? I am a monster in the eyes of everyone who knows my name. Considered the question. It was not simple. He knew that his path would be harder than his own. The weight of command was heavier than the weight of survival. The guilt of giving orders was deeper than the guilt of following them. But it was not impossible. Nothing was impossible if you were stubborn enough. Start small, said. You cannot save the galaxy. You cannot undo what was done, but you can help one person. You can make one small difference, and then another, and another. Eventually, the weight of the good might begin to balance the weight of the bad. You make it sound simple. It is not simple. It is the hardest thing I have ever done, but it is possible. That is all I can offer you, the possibility that things can change. Was quiet for a long time. The bar noise continued around them. Someone laughed at a joke. Someone else cursed at a broken drink dispenser. Life went on as it always did. Finally spoke. When I came into this bar, I expected to die. I expected someone to kill me before I reached the counter. That would have been justice, I thought. That would have been a fitting end. He looked at the Valor Cross in his mechanical hand. But you let me sit. You let me talk. You told me things that no one has ever told me, and now I feel something I have not felt in years. What? Hope's voice was barely a whisper, small and fragile and probably foolish, but Hope felt something shift in his own chest, a loosening, a lightening. For the first time in a long time, the weight felt just a little bit less heavy. Then that is a start, he said. That is all any of us have, a start. He raised his glass. There was only a little liquid left in the bottom. To start, he said. Picked up his empty glass. He held it up, mirroring's gesture. To start, he repeated. They drank the last drops of their drinks. And in the back corner of the drifting anchor, two old soldiers took the first step on a road that neither of them had expected to walk. 1 year later, the back room of the drifting anchor looked very different. Someone had cleaned the walls. Someone had fixed the broken lights. Someone had brought in new chairs, arranged in a rough circle, facing each other instead of facing away. The room that had once been used for storage now held something else entirely. A meeting. Stood near the door, watching as people filed in. Humans came first. Veterans with scars and prosthetics and the tired eyes of those who had seen too much. Was there, her gray hair pulled back, her expression softer than it had been a year ago. Walked in with her prosthetic leg clicking against the floor, but she was smiling now. Actually smiling. And then the came. They entered slowly, carefully, with the caution of people who knew they were not fully welcome yet. There were 5 of them tonight. 3 soldiers, a pilot, and a medic. They were all in their own ways, missing limbs, damaged eyes, the marks of a war that had taken pieces from everyone it touched. Was the last to enter. He looked different now. He stood. His eyes were calmer. The mechanical arm still clicked when he moved, but he no longer hid it in his coat. He wore it openly, like the wound it was. He nodded to as he passed, nodded back. It had taken time to reach this moment, months of careful work, months of small conversations and smaller gestures. After that first night had invited back to the bar, then again, then again. Each time they talked a little more. Each time the walls came down a little further. Other veterans had begun to notice. Some were angry, some were disgusted. A few tried to start fights that had to break up, but some were curious. Some started to listen. Some started to ask questions. And slowly, painfully, something had begun to grow. The first veteran had joined them 3 months ago. A young soldier named who had lost both legs in the battle for Arcturus Station. He had been living in the lower levels of Meridian 9, alone and forgotten, had found him and brought him to the bar. The humans had not been welcoming, but had made him sit at the table just as he had made sit, and had talked. He had talked about the fear and the confusion and the guilt. He had talked about believing the lies and following the orders and watching his friends die for nothing. And some of the humans had listened. Now there were 5 and 23 humans in the group. They met every week in this back room. They talked. They listened. They shared stories and pain and the slow, difficult work of healing. It was not perfect. There were still arguments. There were still moments of rage and grief and old wounds opening fresh. Last week, a human veteran had thrown a chair at and stormed out. She had lost her brother at New Seoul. She was not ready yet. But she would come back, eventually. They always came back. Because there was nowhere else to go. Took his seat in the circle, sat across from him as he always did. The others filled in around them, human and side by side facing each other. Brought drinks and set them on a small table in the center of the circle. Then she took her own seat. She had not spoken in the meetings for the first 6 months. Now she led one of the discussion groups on Tuesdays. The room fell quiet. Looked around at the faces. He saw pain there. He saw guilt. He saw the weight of everything that had happened and everything that could never be undone. But he also saw something else, something that had not been there a year ago. He saw hope. "Thank you for coming," he said. His voice was calm and steady. "I know it is not easy to be here. I know it is not easy to sit across from people who were once your enemies, but you are here. That is what matters." He paused, letting the words settle. "A year ago, I was sitting alone in the main room of this bar. I was drinking because I did not know what else to do. I was carrying a weight that I thought would crush me. I thought I would carry it until I died." He looked at. Then someone asked to share my table. Someone I had every reason to hate. Someone who had done terrible things to me and to people I loved. And I let him sit. Met his gaze. His 4 orange eyes were steady. "I do not know why I did it," continued. "Maybe I was tired of hatting. Maybe I wanted to prove something. Maybe I just wanted to see what would happen. But that one choice changed everything." He gestured at the room around them. "This is what happened, all of you. This room, this meeting, this impossible thing that should not exist. We built it together. We built it one conversation at a time, one moment of trust at a time, one small choice at a time." A veteran named spoke up. She was a pilot, one of the first to join after. Her voice was rough from old throat damage. It is still hard, she said. I still wake up some nights thinking about the ships I destroyed, the escape pods I ignored, the people who died because I followed orders. I know, said. It does not stop being hard. The weight does not disappear, but it gets lighter when you share it. That is what we are doing here. We are helping each other carry what we cannot carry alone. Raised her hand, nodded to her. I want to say something, she said. Her voice was stronger than it had been a year ago. When the first started coming here, I hated it. I wanted to leave. I almost did leave twice. She looked at who was sitting 3 chairs away from her. But then I really talked, and I heard his story. I heard about his fear and his guilt and his nightmares, and I realized something. His nightmares sound exactly like mine. His guilt feels exactly like mine. The war broke him in the same ways it broke me. She took a breath. I am not saying I forgive anyone. I do not know if I can forgive. But I understand now, in a way I did not understand before, and understanding makes the weight a little lighter. Spoke his translated voice soft. Thank you, your words mean more than I can say. The meeting continued. People spoke. Stories were shared. Tears were shed. At one point, a human veteran and a medic who had been on opposite sides of the same battle discovered that they had met before in the chaos of the fighting, and had both believed the other was dead. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then the human laughed, a strange and broken sound. I am glad you survived, he said. I am glad you survived too, the medic replied. It was not much, it was not peace, it was not forgiveness, it was not healing. But it was a start. After the meeting ended and sat alone in the empty room, the others had gone home, back to their quarters and their nightmares and their slow, difficult lives. But the two of them remained, as they often did. I received a message today, said. His voice was quiet. From the council. They want me to testify about the war crimes. They want me to help them build a record of what happened. What will you do? I will go. His mechanical hand closed into a fist, then opened again. I will tell them everything, every order I gave, every life I took, every decision I made. I will not hide from it. I will not make excuses. That is a brave thing, said. No, it is a necessary thing. The truth must be told even when it is ugly, especially when it is ugly. Otherwise, the lies will grow again and another war will come. Nodded slowly, he understood. The work they were doing here in this small room on a forgotten space station was important, but it was not enough. The truth had to spread. The stories had to be told. Otherwise, the weight would never really lift. I will come with you, said. Looked at him in surprise. You would do that. You would stand before my people and tell them what I did to you. I would tell them what was done, corrected. And I would tell them what came after. I would tell them that the man who commanded the camps is now building something new, that the enemy who destroyed my home is now my friend. The word hung in the air between them. Friend. It was a strange word to use. A year ago it would have been impossible, but now it felt true. Was silent for a long moment. His 4 eyes glistened in the low light. Thank you, he said, for everything, for the table, for the conversations, for refusing to let me be the monster I thought I was. Smiled slightly. It was not a happy smile, but it was real. The war tried to make us into monsters, he said, both of us, but we are not what the war made us. We are what we choose to become. That is the only power that matters. He stood and walked to the door. Then he paused and looked back. Same time next week, he asked. Stood, his mechanical arm clicking softly. Same time next week, he agreed. And in the back room of a rundown bar on a forgotten space station, 2 old soldiers walked out together, side by side, friends. The war had ended 7 years ago. But the healing was just beginning. And that was enough. For now, it was enough.